Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I don't know what the weather's like where you are, but it is very cloudy and raining here in Charlotte, North Carolina. And for some reason, our guest speaker is having some major tech problems. And Claire Dubé, I believe she spends her time partly in Connecticut and partly in South Carolina, but I believe she's in South Carolina right now. And she has a great presentation for us today. She's a great presenter and speaker and a special supporter and fan of financial social work. So she and our tech person, Olga, are trying to fix it so that we can have her presentation. Meanwhile, I want to welcome all of you to our monthly free webinar. It's been a while since we had any tech problems. We've had them years ago, but since many of you probably work from home now too, you're probably familiar with tech problems. I will just go through some of our commonly asked questions and some suggestions to get us all set up here. You can check this chat box for messages. A lot of people ask if the slides are shared. They're not, they're proprietary, but the recording will be on our website, our Facebook page, and our YouTube channel, either later today or the next few days. And we also email it to you. If you have questions, you may type them into the question box
Can you
through
hear me?
the training. The other very frequently asked question is whether there are CEs or certificates of attendance for this. And we can't supply those. Sorry.
Seems like we have Claire now.
Okay.
Let's check how. Claire, can you say something?
I'm on.
Okay. Now we're good, everybody. So I usually start my presentations with this slide, suggesting that we take a deep breath, because so often when we talk about money, it brings up many, many different thoughts and feelings. And I'll tell you, I can use this slide right now after these tech problems. And I am going to take a deep breath in myself and exhale it, and suggest that you do the same one more time. And we will keep going. So this is our financial social work affirmation that I like to start my presentations with. I feel that it really captures the essence of financial social work. It's called Just for Today. I will love myself enough to face my fears, practice self-acceptance, and embrace hope. Just for today, I will silence my inner critic, speak my truth, and make peace with my past. I will give myself permission to eliminate toxic people, beliefs, and behaviors from my life. And just for today, I will prepare for a better tomorrow by making friends with my money and with myself today. So, the past few months, because we do these free webinars every month, we've talked about many of the different issues we were all facing through COVID. And I know that we're still all living with a lot of uncertainty. It probably really depends on what part of the country also that you're living in. But I decided we wouldn't go through all those details today. I would just jump right in because I want to have enough time for Claire Dubé to give us her wonderful training and to allow time for Q&A. So keep those questions going into the question box. So just want to tell those of you who are new to our monthly free webinar or to financial social work that we meet at the intersection of politics, the economy, social work, and economic and social justice. You can go through these lists and see some of the influences that we feel have to do with the work of the Center for Financial Social Work. We know that no one chooses to have many money problems, but most people do have them. So we have our financial wellness model. My work stems from the belief that it's our relationship with our money and relationship with ourselves that drives our financial behavior. Financial behavior being how we earn, spend, save, share, and borrow. And it's that behavior that determines our financial circumstances. And my little dancing arrow shows you that this is where change happens. Financial social work is a change model. We go beyond the dollars, cents, debt, math, budgets, and we try really hard to go beyond crisis intervention, because when everything is a crisis, then we're living a model of inactive or reactive behavior. And we want so badly to help all men and women be more proactive with their money. So, at the heart of my work, we explore the fundamentals of financial well-being. It is that psychosocial component. We look at the thoughts, feelings, attitudes, beliefs, experiences, and values that drive financial behavior, how we earn, spend, save, share, and borrow. So the work is interactive, reflective, strength-based. The model is educational, motivational. Actually, we include validation and support because that's what people need to create sustainable long-term financial behavioral change. It's holistic, multidisciplinary, has a healing and hopeful and helpful component, and it succeeds when done with individuals and with groups. It is about changing relationship with money, recognizing and embracing, taking ownership. We want to help our clients take ownership of their own financial health, change their relationship with themselves. So there's a strong component of self-discovery, self-care, and self-healing. We want to change the thinking, which I've already mentioned several times to you, and of course, change the behavior. So, major goal of financial social work is to make peace with our money. And now it gives me great pleasure, it really does, to turn this over to Claire Dubé, and she can tell you more about herself. And there she is. Okay. So,
let's see if we can share this content now.
it's good to hear you, Claire.
Well, let's just say, so I'm in present mode. Can you see my screens?
I don't.
No, we can't.
Of course you can't, because why would things go easy?
Claire, it went
for
so well at the rehearsal, Claire.
Anyway, so you can't see anything that I have on here. Is that?
Did you accept it? Did
what
you
you're
accept
saying?
it from me?
All right. So just so you know, everybody in tech world over here, because it's on, on an iPad right now that I'm doing this, as opposed to the computer, it's not letting the acceptance come through. So be that as it may, I have a lot of content to share. The slides are just a background to look at. So what I'm going to do is, rather than waste your time on this and doing the tech part of it, I'm just going to go right into the content that I'd like to share. That works for everybody. Perfect. So today's where I'm going to be talking about financial date nights. And this is all for keeping couples connected. And there's a couple of caveats that I want to share with that. And one is it doesn't have to be a night. This is financial dates, and they can be done anytime, day, night, evening. It's based on your schedule. The other thing I want to share is this doesn't necessarily have to be just for couples. And you as an individual should take the time to schedule these dates with yourself, where you set aside time to focus solely on your financial life, what it is for goals, what your wellness, the whole package of it. So when we're going to be specifically talking about couples today, I do want to let you know this is just as important if you're not in a committed relationship to have these conversations. The other caveat that I want to share is that this is information being shared, personal finances. And finances are just that. They're personal. So what I share with you today comes from my experiences, from my research, from my processes. So what I'd really like you to do is take the information that I share and take what resonates with you so that you can in turn make it into your plan. There's a lot of financial gurus out there. There's a lot of financial experts out there. And let me tell you, we don't all know everything. And what we share is based on our experiences. So what works for us can be tweaked to work for you. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that this is not a one and done. It's what you can take that you resonate with and add it to your financial dates that you set up. So also what I want to talk about is what exactly is a financial date, and why do we need to have them? So this is really a conversation that is focused on all things money. And when I say all things, that means that it's in the topic of all things, but that you don't have to jam every aspect of your financial life in one date. This is something that is done on a regular basis, and it's planned out. There's an agenda, there's a topic. So my particular process is called SMART Chats. And SMART is an acronym for saving money and relationships together. And this is done one conversation at a time. And when we set up these financial date nights or financial dates, they're done with starting out with a very general high look. So what you might want to do is start out with just saying, what are our values? What are our financial goals? And as you have these dates, you're going to find out that you will be looking at things more specifically as you go through. But you need to start with a foundation. So what exactly are some criteria that we should be looking at financial nights? So one of the things that you'd like to do is set a specific time to chat about these finances. This isn't something that as you're flying by each other, you quickly say, hey, we should talk later on tonight. Let's make this a very specific time, put it on the calendar, check in to confirm that no plans have changed, that there's still the time is date. So one is making sure that this is on target on calendar. The second criteria is that you should have a topic that you want to talk about. Discuss it ahead of time so that you are on the same page and it's in a controlled environment for the conversation, and to try and keep it from going off track. The third criteria is always, and I use that word specifically and cautiously, always make it a no shame, no blame setting. And why I talk about using that word always in that aspect is because the words should, always, never, those are very, very strong words. And you have to understand when you do them, the meaning behind it. And in this case, when I really stress always, you never want to use shame or blame. This is some type of conversation to be open, to be vulnerable, to share with someone that you love and that you're connected with. So some of the things I'd like to talk about on these financial dates is the do's and don'ts and what they are to make this successful for you. And before I do that, Leah, could you put poll number 1 up?
Yes, sure.
So on poll number 1, when did you have your first money conversation with your partner? Now, usually this is done when you're in a committed relationship. So yeah, on here with the first 5 dates, was it after dating over a year? When you declared to go into a committed relationship, never, or other? I'll give you a few more seconds on here. All right, Leah, can you give me the final count on that? Very interesting. Well, I'm glad to see that never is very small of a percentage. That's very good news on this. Interesting, within the first 5 dates. This is some really great information. So thank you on that. One of the reasons that I ask is there was a study done by Ameriprise Financial, and Ameriprise found that 68% of couples who were in sync about their finances described communicating over money with their partner as perfect or very good. And TD Bank also did a survey, and they reported that 78% of couples who talk weekly about money say they are happy. So there seems to be a little bit of a correlation between happiness and discussing finances. So we'll talk about some of the do's and don'ts on successful financial date nights. And again, I want to clarify that these are a guide to use, and you need to work with your partner on what works for both of you. When you set these up, these do's and don'ts, this is all based on making it a successful opportunity to chat so that everybody, as I said before, can be vulnerable and share. And you want to make them as comfortable as possible so that there isn't that conflict or resulting in not making these consistent, because you want to make sure that this becomes something that's habitual to keep you in sync, so that you catch anything that may slip through the cracks from a big expense of a wedding or an anniversary or a new car. So that's the goal, is to make these chats comfortable so that they lead to consistency. Quite frankly, no one is going to want to put these dates on the calendar if there's conflict after conflict and it doesn't have any resolve. Some of the do's. So I like to make sure that you pick a location that's very calm, relaxing, where there isn't a lot of distractions, and timing of the dates as well, where again, you don't want it while you're making dinner. You want to make sure that full attention can be given. Usually trying to set time limits on this as well, 30 to 60 minutes. However, if you seem to be on a roll with a discussion, there seems to be some non-conflict going through and to trying to resolve whatever a topic it is, the time limit is not something set in stone. It's just used as a guide. We really want to make sure that there isn't the feeling of overwhelm, and that's why we usually say between 30 and 60 minutes. And as the location that we talked about, wanting it to be in a calming, relaxing environment. However, you don't want to make it too too relaxing on there. So it's not something that you would necessarily want to set in the bedroom, because finances are a very different type of intimacy, but sometimes we might want to just set it up in a living room, den, or relaxing atmosphere from that one. Another thing is they don't necessarily need to be at night. I mean, you could be sitting at the beach. You can be sitting, in the afternoon, depending on work schedule. For me, one of the don'ts is I don't have date nights where we're over a glass of wine or a bourbon old fashioned.
Claire, I'm really sorry. Can you see the screen? We have your presentation now. I'm sorry for the interruption.
Say that again.
Rita, can you see the screen? I'm sharing the screen now.
Oh, can you put it in presentation view?
So you can see. Okay, nice. I just wanted to be sure. And just navigate me what slide you need now.
Okay. So it's on slide 5. Yay, technology. Anyway, as we're talking about the do's and don'ts, I was saying that I typically don't advise my clients or myself to have these dates over a glass of wine or a bourbon old fashioned, though I enjoy those. I like to always make sure that when I'm talking about finances or negotiating a deal, that I do it with a clear mind. My beverage of choice is coffee. But then again, this is just a guideline on my thing. So I like to keep finance dates dry. Some of the things that we would suggest covering, so the do's, is come specific with an agenda. Come specific with a topic or two that you'd like to speak to. And make sure that both are comfortable with the topic that's going to be suggested. This is where it becomes a give and take, and you want to be listening, clearly listening about what your partner is stating. So in this case, I use what is here. So you want to make sure that when you're speaking with honesty. Each partner should be honest in how they feel and where they stand financially. And if you're in debt, you want to make sure that you're not hiding that. You want to come clean. So make these conversations honest. The E in here is empathy, because you want to put yourself in your partner's shoes as you're listening to their goals, and you want to work to understand your partner's perspective. The A in here is accountability. You want to take ownership of the financial decisions that you've made, and you don't want to pass judgment on to your partner or to anybody else in that matter. It's just being accountable for your actions. And R for the here is respect. And you may not always agree on every topic. You may not agree on how to approach different financial transactions, but you want to be respectful. And you want to respect each other during these conversations. When you hear and listen, come to the table with not wanting to speak your mind while the person's talking. Listen to what they have to say first. Oftentimes, when somebody is speaking, they're going to answer your questions and bring about clarity. But if you're focusing on what you want to say and interject your opinions on it, you're never fully engaged in listening to what your partner has to say. You also want to consider your financial goals so that you're always marking it to milestones, that if you set out for certain financial goals, you're checking in with each other to see where you are, what setbacks there were, how you've made forward. Perhaps you can now add another goal on once you've completed. So you're always adding on to your financial plan. You also want to be scheduling these dates on a regular basis. So in my case, we're at the point where we do it at the end of the month to kind of recap what's been done, and then we set what things are going to be moving forward in the next month. When you're first starting out, my recommendation is that you do these on a weekly basis. And I will say that you need to find date times that work for both. So if planning on Sunday at 3 o'clock every Sunday, every week works for you, put it in your calendar. If you've got a schedule that work schedules are mixed up, you want to be flexible, but you want to be mindful as well. So rotate it, whatever day that works for you. Just make sure you put them on the calendar. Check in with each other to make sure that you're still on board and engaged. The goal here is to be consistent, because the more consistent that you are with speaking with each other and having these conversations, the less chance that you have anything falling through the crack, bills unpaid, or missed big opportunities. Could be for having discussions on grant monies or student loans for upcoming college costs. So you really want to make sure that there's consistency with it. And as you start to get into your mode that works for you, then you can continue on, tweak it. Maybe it doesn't need to be each time, every month, the same time. There are different ways that these can be held, where maybe one takes the lead with coming up with the agenda. Maybe you have a discussion on who's going to handle the day-to-day finances. Maybe one handles the bill paying, another one handles investments. And these are the conversations that need to be done to map out exactly who's responsible for whom, so that when you come to your next date meeting, you aren't stumbling upon, I thought you were doing it, or you were doing it. You want to set roles. And in this case, I would suggest that you use the roles that match your skill set. For example, if you have somebody who really likes to do research, look at the numbers, watch the Dow, watch the S&P, and let that be strength used to do the investments. If you have somebody who likes to see where to shave off every penny that's not being used, wasted, and such, maybe that's the person who does the day-to-day finances. So it's going by each other's strengths. And not everybody's an expert, like I said, in every aspect, so work together. And always remember to recall on your significant other if you are stuck, there's an obstacle. You always want to be seeking clarity. And if you need help, you want to be able to reach out and say, hey, I'm stuck. And if it's before your next meeting, you work it out by just saying, I might need some time. Can you give me some help? You want to constantly have these conversations so that you can always come back with something that you can set and make that goal at the end of your date that you have achieved. So you start off with the agenda, and then you can always switch times. So if you had something that you had to be done by this next meeting, you don't have enough time, give yourself comfort, reach out, say I need help, and reschedule for the next meeting to add that agenda item. So some of the conversations come about, using mixed money conversations to go together, is what do we really talk about? What's a starter conversation? And these conversations get started depending on where you are in your relationship. If you're in a newly committed relationship, you may want to start out with some things on just being open with credit scores, what debt you have, where you bank, how often you get paid from work. So something that you might start out on is just kind of some basic information. As you get on, you may gravitate to things that might be, what do we feel about lending money to friends and family? Now that's a pretty big conversation to be had, and sometimes that won't necessarily be resolved in one conversation. So it's nice to know that you can constantly go back and ongoing conversation about that and build on it. So perhaps your first meeting, you'll talk about your reasons why you don't want to lend money. And then what occasions that you might, if there was a need for, what boundaries that you would set. You'd also like to talk to each other about how you each feel through financial wellness. Is finances something that you feel comfortable with? Is it something that gives you anxiety? What items trigger the most? The basis of these dates, financial dates, is to always be moving forward. So one of the things that you want to be mindful of is set action steps to be completed in between your meetings. And these can be action steps that are as small as reading the Wall Street Journal. It could be looking up what your stocks that you're invested in. It could be opening up a savings account. It's always being just some step moving forward. So the basis of these is also to understand and learn more about your partner, their financial styles, their money stories, where they come from, and where their perspective is coming from. So for an example, in my household, I am one of 4 siblings. All of us were raised with the same parents. Our parents remained married until my mother passed. So we were all raised the same way. However, our experiences were very different. So for my 2 older siblings, as they were growing up, my parents were building a business. So they didn't have health insurance. They barely had 2 nickels because they invested everything in creating their business. When myself and my younger brother started to grow, we got the benefit of my parents being in their success of their business. So as the older siblings were at the startup, my brother and I were when it became successful. So the difference of vacations, where my older siblings did a lot of day trips individually with my parents, where my brother and I did more traveling. So we had the benefit of that growth in that business that my parents grew. The 4 of us all value the same things. Pretty much our values are the same with family, financial stability. However, our approaches are very, very different to money because our experiences growing up were very different. So even though you could be in the same household, your views are skewed by your experiences and by your perception, what you see going on. So when you're talking to your partner, understand that their views of money will never be the same views as yours because their experiences have been different, their friendships have been different, their teachings have been different. And you'd always want to seek clarity when speaking with your significant other and your partner on money and grasp where they're coming from, what their understanding is. So if your partner was raised in a household where money was extremely tight, and when they worked as a teenager, the family took some of that money to help out, you might have an understanding as an adult why they may want to hoard money and not spend very often. They took the perception of that money, may not last, or somebody may take it from me, so I need to hold on to it. So in your mind, you may think that this person is very stingy, doesn't want to share, doesn't want to spend, but there's a reason behind everybody's behaviors around money. And during these dates, money dates, it's an opportunity for you to ask questions and start to understand your partner and what view and perspective they're coming from when it comes to finances. We all come with our own money stories. Oftentimes, these perspectives are just from ideas that we have in our head, their thoughts, their beliefs, and not necessarily truths as all would see them, but they're truths as we see them. Because remember, our perception is our truth. So when we're speaking about our money and it's coming from our beliefs, it's our truth. And the more that we can be vulnerable and open up and share, And the more as partners can ask clarifying questions, the smoother and less amount of conflict around money will come about. So this is a time to start asking questions, also building that foundation. Perhaps you can ask your partner about their first memory of money. What did they earn money as a teenager? What did they do with that money? What was their first big purchase? And did they save up for it over time? Or was it something that was bought on a whim on credit? As you ask these questions, you can start this, they call it the 5 whys. So you ask why. Why did you put it on credit? And then follow up. And the whys are to bring your partner down to really focusing on what made those behaviors. Why was it that they chose to put it on credit? Did they need that instant gratification? Did they get a new job that they needed to buy a car because it was the only mode of transportation? So these are the items that you want to be focusing on, to always seek clarity, to understand where your partner is coming from. Also, we talked earlier about wanting to discuss values. It's important to know what your significant others, what do they value? I do this practice where we take a list of different value words, could be 50 of them. And you go and you pick your top 10, and then you scale to your top 5, and then you scale till you come to your top 3. And it's great to share with your partner what your top 3 values are. Oftentimes, at least one of them will be the same with your partner. And when you go and look at these values, discuss why they're important to each other. And then you could use that as a basis when you're creating financial goals during your date nights, to make sure that when you're using the different spending processes that you're using, do they match with those values? Are they staying in line and in true to what each of you desire? When you come up to, say, a trigger or a conflict during your dates, one of the actual do's that you should be doing when you start to come with conflict is stop, pause, take a deep breath, and share with your partner that something is coming up that is making you anxious. There's anxiety. You're feeling uncomfortable. See if the two of you can talk through what your feeling is. And if it's something where you just feel off and don't think that conversation continuing will resolve it at this time, then this is the time where you'd say in your date, I don't think I can move forward at this time. I need to set back, think a little bit. So let's stop. So that's a real big don't continue asking questions at that point. That comes to the respect part again when we talked about here, is you want to be able to respect your partner that there is some uncomfortableness. You may ask, as I said, we'll kind of go through to say what's making you uncomfortable. And that might work some of the kinks out to move forward, but don't push the issue. So those are some of the do's and the don'ts in that aspect. There are different aspects, again, depending on what aspect you're in your relationship, from whether you've been long-term in this committed relationship. You might find conversations become very specific on how are we going to make payroll in our company that we run, or how are we going to do tuition next week, as opposed to when you're just starting out, where it's really building up that foundation and learning about each other's financial life. So this is kind of a general, as I said, personal finance is very personal, and you need to be able to understand that everybody has their different perspective. And the main goal of these financial dates is to bring you on the same page, or at least bring understanding to your significant other in their financial behaviors. One thing that I would like to say to always keep in mind, and I use that word always again, is always seek clarity. When you leave a financial date with not having understanding or a clear understanding, seek that clarity by asking another question, or say, I don't understand this, but let's pick it up at a next time. When you leave without having understanding, miscommunication happens, conflict piles up. So you always want to seek clarity. So Leah, do we have some questions as we're going through this? Because I know there's a lot that I'm kind of throwing out in this time period.
Yeah, for this, I need to just stop sharing if you finished with...
Yep, we can go back to this. I just don't want to miss anybody's questions if it's clarifying some of the things that I've said.
Yes, okay, I will check right now. We have a question. Can you repeat what acronym?
Olga.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Claire, hand it back to me first so I can finish up and then we'll do the Q&A.
Oh, sure. Of course.
Okay. Did you hand it over?
Sorry, Rita?
Did you hand it back to me?
You mean presentation? You just need click start sharing. Make presenter.
Okay, I got it now. Okay. Hi, Claire, thanks so much. And we're going to get to those questions in just a second. I wanted to finish up by telling everyone about some upcoming webinars we have scheduled for Social Work Month. We have on Thursday, March 11th, Financial Discrimination and Disparities in the LGBTQIA community. And for Financial Literacy Month, we have Socially Responsible Investing, good for people, the planet, and for you. So we hope to see you back for some of those webinars. And I wanted to tell everyone that we do offer a financial social work certification. It is a self-study and self-paced program that our students and graduates have 6 months to complete. It includes a final exam along with 20 CEUs from National NASW. And there is a payment plan for the cost of $695. And Claire is a certified financial social work counselor. So she's one of our graduates. I wanted to remind everyone that they can watch for the recording. And we do not offer CEs or certificates of attendance. And now we are totally ready for the Q&A.
I actually got somebody who already emailed me a question, but Leah, share what you have on there. And
yes, we have a maybe small question for you. You already told about during the presentation. Can you repeat what acronym you are using again? I caught this SMART, but missed the second. Was it HEAR?
Yes. So the first one is Smart Chats, which is my process, which is saving money and relationships together, the acronym SMART. The other one that my process that I use is called HEAR, which is that's your when you are listening or having conversations. HEAR is honesty, empathy, accountability, and respect. Those are the 4 things that you always want to keep in mind when you're having conversations.
Okay. Thank you. And we have one more question. Your date night sounds like it's focused on upper middle class people. You make reference to stock portfolios and tuition payments. How about those folks who are struggling to pay bills or have lost their jobs? What advice?
Okay, so the process is the exact same thing. So I use the stock market or day-to-day finances because those are two very different activities that are done. So I use that as an example. These conversations from the here, smart chats, everything that lay out about discussions all fall, whether you're a single person, committed relationship, or what socioeconomic that you fall under. It's still the same process of coming together with a topic. In this case, it might be somebody who has just lost their job, and the top is going to be, okay, we need to sit down and figure out, one, how long will unemployment, if their unemployment happens, how long is that going to last us? And how can we switch shifts? So there are additional shifts that can be made at work. What can we do to cover daycare? Can we switch our schedule so that we're not paying for daycare, but we're covering from each shift? When my husband and I first started out and had children right away, daycare was an expense that we just couldn't afford. My husband worked the night shift and I worked during the day, and then I don't know where we got sleep in between that. We worked through it. So my clients typically range from different socioeconomics, but the processes, the questions, the agendas, the date night process is still the same no matter what.
Okay, thank you, Claire.
May I just add something? I
Yes.
think we want to encourage clients, whether they're single or in relationships, to spend time with their money. The only way you know how much you have, how much you need, how much you spend, all of the basics of your financial life or lives is by spending time with your money. Obviously, a date night represents something between a couple, two men, two women, a man and a woman, whatever the relationship. And there is a give and a take and an interaction. And I loved how Claire talked about, if you've been doing it for a while and you've been in this relationship for a long time, you may just need to do it once a month. But certainly when you're starting out, to do it every week is probably much more timely and much more relevant, because there's so much to learn about your finances, and as she went into depth on, about each other. And the more you learn how to talk about money together and respectfully, if you can do that during the better times, you were more likely to be able to do it during the more challenging times. And
Yeah.
I think that's helpful when those challenging times come up.
And good point with that, Rita. And here's another thing that in these conversations, you don't want to bring family in. And what I mean by that is, if you have shared information with a parent or a sibling, you don't want to then go into these conversations by saying, my mother said this, or my brother said this. You want to keep that separate and not bring it in, because that falls under the categories of the shame and blame. The other thought is, family is involved in finances. So these date nights are focused on you as a couple and your money. There are times where it would be good to bring in children into the conversations, though, so that there could be an understanding, perhaps with a teenage child getting ready to go to college, and you bring them into the conversation of, here's how much money that we can contribute. Let's see what we can do about loans, scholarships. So oftentimes this can become a financial date night or financial date as a couple that can splinter off with having family members as well. Because when you talk about money openly with your children and give them an environment where you're able to talk about it so that there isn't that angst or that stress. Keep adult conversations adult, but there are times to share with children as well. So if you are having these meetings, say, for example, that someone lost a job, it is good to have a conversation with your children as well to let them understand that there are some changes happening and this is how you're approaching things so that you can give them a sense of security when you're not feeling secure. You can give them a place to feel less stress in a time that's very stressful. So it's not necessarily keeping things completely from your kids, because kids will also pick up on your body language and they will interpret your body language to something that fits their narrative. They may miss out on an opportunity for a college where they could have gotten scholarships because they hear that there's such money problems they don't even attempt to go to college. So remember that everybody's experiences build up their money stories and build up their perspectives. And body language is definitely another communication style that is used when you may not, obviously be conscious of it. So I would like to say that this is not something that just can be with a couple in a committed relationship, but it can branch off to family members as well. Does that make sense?
I'd like to point out or add to that. I'm having fun doing this with you, Claire. I'd like to point out you always want it to be age appropriate when you're working with children or bringing them into a conversation. And you can use that opportunity of your scheduled time or date night to determine what those conversations should be, which child or children should be involved. And I think you make a great point, Claire, when you talk about children. Children know, they're so intuitive. They're observing us when we're not even aware of their observation, and they pick up on the stress. And so, I think you bring in that honesty piece again. And for some families, these are very hard times. So take advantage of using the opportunities. I think, and you can tell me if you agree, Claire, I mean, we want a date or a time that we've scheduled with another person. We want to use that to avoid constantly talking about money or arguing about money. So if we create an agenda over the week of things that need addressed, and if things come up that are problematic and devolve into arguments and screaming, we take that out of the conversation and add it to the date night or scheduled meeting and plan for it in a way that is not arguing and accusatory.
And also, for those that are doing this work, I know at least one person on here that their company does do sets money dates or talks to their clients about money dates. One of the things, if you are working with couples and facilitating these conversations, I can't stress enough to make sure that both parties are fully aware that you are coming to have these conversations. I did have one couple that I worked with when I showed up at the door. The wife did tell me that she told her husband that she had a big surprise for him, and that it was his birthday. There was a big surprise. And turns out I was the big surprise to have this money conversation. He was completely caught off guard. Luckily for me, he was extremely respectful to me, sat and we did have these conversations, but never want to be blindsided. So do make sure that when you are facilitating these as a financial social worker, or financial social work counselor, that you make sure both parties are fully aware that you are going to be facilitating these conversations. You never want somebody to be caught off guard.
And that you are a neutral person.
Absolutely.
We actually have close to this question. How do you encourage a client to include their partner into the money conversation? The partner is always unwilling.
So that's a great question. On that, don't make it about them. Don't make it about we. Here's the thing where you make it about you. So when you say to you chat with your partner to say, I have some anxiety or stress around us not being able to pay certain bills, or whatever it is that you're feeling, that you share with them that this is how I'm feeling, and I could use your help in getting your perspective. You want to make it so you can share with them that it isn't something that they're doing wrong, because most times when a couple, one is not coming on board with something, it has to do with triggers in them. So perhaps, as I said before, they grew up with a household where the parents were fighting all the time when it came to money. So in their mind, even having that discussion brings up a lot of anxiety. But when you share that you're feeling whatever A, B, and C that you're feeling, and you would like to ask for their perspective on something, how would they approach it? Engage it in that way. It's not always perfect.
Thank you, Claire. We also have a question about certification. Do I need a background in social work to get certified? I think it's a question to Rita.
No, you don't need to be a social worker. We certify non-social workers also. And we welcome everyone. We are inclusive.
I was not a social worker. I've been certified.
And one more question. Can you explain how financial social work helps a person get better with their money?
Well, because we look at the thoughts, feelings, attitudes, and beliefs, the model incorporates motivation, education, validation, and support. We know that that's what people need to create sustainable long-term financial behavioral change. And until and unless behavior changes, nothing changes. And we help clients understand why they are, where they want to be in the future. And we help them create a strategy for success. Claire, can you answer that?
Yeah, you know what? I think that you have to take it with what it comes with. So just getting certified doesn't make you great at money, but it opens you up to a process and a system to review, to change your perspective. And I think my personal thing is, you need to do the work for yourself to be able to then share with others. Not that your money changes, your behavior changes are going to be the same as clients that you work with, but you'll understand the process. And I will say that I've been doing this since 2004, way before I knew what financial social work was. And it does align with a lot of things that I have done in money changes for myself. So I think that's one of the big things. It just gives you another perspective on learning how to address money and what money symbolizes to you, because that's really what it comes down to. Money is just a symbolism of something.
Well, also, I created it intentionally so that our students would have the skills, the knowledge, the understanding to improve their own financial lives, as well as to help clients do the same thing. So that's, pretty much what we are about. Did you want to answer something that someone sent you, Claire? Someone sent you a different question?
I did. It was talking about do people work these dates? Can you offer somebody to come in with you as a third party? And that was basically what I was saying. As financial social workers, if you work with clients, you are that third person going in. So that was the question on there. And I was going to just say something and I lost my train of thought. It'll come to me.
My world.
Anyway, yeah.
Questions, Olga?
No, that's all.
Well, I'd like to thank you, Claire, tremendously. And Olga, who does all things tech and was just critical to making this all happen today. And of course, all of you, our audience, for hanging in there with us. And we hope to see you again in the future. Stay well, everybody, and have a beautiful rest of the day. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Claire.